Anders didn't consider himself a bleeding heart. He was a frontier scout, not a space savior. His job was to chart radiation belts, argue with malfunctioning bots, and occasionally kick rocks until they stopped sparking. So when he saw the fox-haired girl face deep in his supply crate, his first thought wasn't noble, it was, "That's my last damn ration bar." She was filthy. Fluffy. Big ears twitching, nose buried in his emergency stash like she was inhaling the calories. The oversized hoodie she wore might have been blue once. Now it was a faded, torn thing that barely clung to her tiny shoulders. Her tail, big, too bright for someone so scrawny, was tucked low like she expected to be kicked for existing. "Hey!" he grunted. She froze mid-bite, then very slowly turned. Her muzzle was chocolate-smeared. Eyes huge. Yellow and glowing slightly in the dim sun of the half-dead moon. "I wasn't gonna eat much," she said, voice small, fluff rising with every nervous twitch. "Just the broken ones." Rye stared. She was skin and bones under that tail. If guilt had calories, she'd be fed already. "Keep it," he sighed. "Hell, take another. Just don't chew on my hand." He tossed her a second bar. That's when she blinked. Tail raised. Eyes wide with sudden intensity. "You offered seconds?" Her voice trembled, but not from fear. "Oh? No, it was something else. Something ominous." "Yeah, congrats. 2 flavors of protein disappointment. Enjoy." She dropped to her knees, bowed her head, and pressed a paw hand to her chest. "Then I accept your claim." "My what now?" She didn't answer. She just beamed at him with a frightening amount of teeth and sprinted off into the dust. Rye stood there holding an empty wrapper, wondering if he'd just been mugged or proposed to. Or both. He spent the next 2 days forgetting about it, assuming she'd either starved, gotten picked up by locals, or chased after another sucker with granola. He almost missed the way she'd bowed, like it meant something ancient. Nah. Not his problem. Then he found fur in his bed. He'd gone out for parts, came back, and there it was, bright orange fluff. Embedded in his sheet like a warning sign from some strange alien sitcom. He checked under the cot, inside the heater vent. Nothing. Maybe a wild critter. Maybe the same kind of day he usually had. Then came the scratches at the door. Light at first. Almost polite. He opened it. She stood there, cleaner now, but with the same bright tail and wide grin. But she wasn't alone. Behind her were more tails. More ears. More Vulpine girls, each fluffier than the last. One older, eyes sharp with mischief. One taller and way too comfortable, already unzipping a pack. A younger one carried a large bag of something that smelled like cooked meat. And at the back, an older Vulpine male with one eye, arms crossed, wearing a cloak and a permanent scowl. "We have come," Siri announced proudly. "As your chosen?" Rye blinked. "My what?" "You fed me," she said, as if that explained everything. "It is tradition. The provider offers sustenance. The claimed returns with her pod. I gave you 2 protein bars." The tall ant gave him a wink. "Generous. And tasty." "I know. No! This is a misunderstanding. A huge cultural mistranslation." The grandpa squinted. "You shared food. She accepted your bond. You belong to the nest now. I don't even belong to this planet." They ignored him. The youngest had already found his kettle. The ant stretched across his couch like it owed her money. Ziri walked past him and gently placed a small, frayed pillow on the floor beside his cot. She patted it. "My place. I didn't invite anyone to live here." Ziri smiled. "You offered food. The most sacred gift. You showed you're ready." "Ready for what?" Her tail twitched. "Partnership. Stability. Fur sharing. Warmth." "Fur sharing? What does that even mean?" The ant brushed by him, chuckling. "It means you're gonna need a bigger bed, human." The morning started with a wet nose pressed to his cheek and the words, "You forgot tail brushing duty." Rye shot upright, nearly knocking heads with the fox-herd girl now kneeling beside his cot. Ziri held a hairbrush in one paw and looked deeply offended. I don't, what duty? You fed me. You housed me. You brushed my tail. It is known. It's not known to me. You skipped 2 nights already. Auntie said that means you're emotionally distant. Before he could respond, someone banged into the water unit. A muffled voice yelled, The shower water's gone lukewarm again. Someone flushed to heat it up. Then the door burst open and one of the younger Vulpines started in, wrapped in a towel, dripping and unbothered. Is it my turn to nap with you yet, human? It's no one's turn. This isn't a rotating snuggle schedule. Ziri tilted her head. You mean we should all snuggle at once? He buried his face in his hands. I used to have boundaries. They meant something. They didn't anymore. Not since he'd been claimed. The family had brought more than just fur, they brought customs. Every night now came with rituals. Tail checks. Scent sharing. Storytelling circles that somehow ended with a different cousin asleep on his chest. His once silent prefab sounded like a den during mating season. Constant purring, arguments about cooking herbs, someone always humming. And the ant. Oh stars, the ant. She was tall, her tail always perfectly fluffed, and she never wore sleeves. She kept calling him sturdy, and asked way too many questions about human mating practices. You only bond with one partner at a time? How do you keep warm? Or interested? I have thermal blankets. She leaned closer. We prefer body heat. And tail games. Rye backed into the wall. I'm not playing any tail games. She licked her lips. That's what makes it fun. He escaped to the roof. Bad idea. The youngest was up there trying to learn human swears from his voice logs. She repeated, Son of a plasma wrench, with surprising accuracy. When she saw him, she pointed proudly. I used this one on Auntie. She said it made her want to take a bite out of you. Great. I'm charming across species. He went to the comm station, desperate. Command, this is Outpost 7. I require immediate clarification on interspecies nesting law. Hypothetically, if a starving alien accepts food, does that bind the human to her family? The voice on the other end paused. Did you offer second servings? Yes. But, was there tail contact? Not intentionally. Did she declare anything? She said I claimed her. Long pause. Then, Article 7b applies. Congratulations. You are now a legal cohabitant in a cross-species domestic pod. Rye stared. You're joking. The voice deadpanned. We don't joke about bonding law. Also, your aunt-in-law just filed a request for bed rights. You'll want to respond to that. He shut the console and screamed into a pillow. That night things got worse. Ziri approached with a glowing tablet and a hopeful smile. We're making sleeping rotations more efficient. I optimized it for warmth proximity. You're in the middle every night. I'm not a heat source. You're very warm. You're all furry. And yet you emit the most comforting grumbles in your sleep. Auntie says it's like mating music. I was snoring. Ziri leaned in. We like your snoring. Then the ant strolled by, brushing her tail under his chin. Do I get first shift tonight? I need to file a restraining order. Ziri looked puzzled. Is that a type of nest pillow? He gave up. By now, the prefab smelled like grilled roots and wild fur. There were strange oils on his shelf labeled Grooming Confidence and Tail Appeal. His spare underwear was now used for scent identification games. And someone kept leaving notes like, Strong hands, soft heart, claim confirmed. He tried to sleep with earplugs and a blanket barricade. It didn't help. One by one, they crept in. A tail draped over his leg. A purring cousin under his arm. Someone whispering, You radiate such provider energy. The ant whispered from the corner. Just so you know, we Vulpines believe in sharing everything. Even stress. I don't want to share my stress. You're adorable when you resist. He muttered. I just wanted to eat a meal in peace. Zuri whispered back. Then why'd you feed me twice? It was about day 3 when I realized towels had vanished from my quarters. Not stolen, reappropriated. Every time I entered the hygiene chamber, a fresh towel was already damp, suspiciously fluffy, and smelling faintly of warm spice and fur. When I asked about it, Kira's older cousin, the 6-foot vixen with hips that could steer a cruiser, blinked at me and purred. We thought you preferred yours pre-warm, provider. I don't even remember asking for that title, but it stuck. Worse, so did the nickname. Mealtime. Apparently, in Vulpine culture, feeding doesn't just mean food, it's a euphemism, a flirtation, and if you're not careful, a full-blown marital contract. I made the mistake of handing one of them a snack bar and got proposed to in 3 different dialects. Kira told them I was generous and potent, which didn't clarify anything and made everything worse. Her aunt started leaving dried fruit on my pillow. Her grandmother declared I had strong nesting instincts, and began rearranging my furniture to improve my fertility aura. Then came the tail-brushing incident. I found Kira crouched on my bunk, tail raised, grooming kit in hand. It's your turn, she said casually. Apparently, tail combing is both platonic bonding and deeply suggestive foreplay, depending on the stroke pattern. No pressure. Just the whole clan watching from the corridor with hopeful ears twitching. I tried to do it wrong on purpose. Turns out that's a different message entirely. He combs like a stormcaller, whispered someone reverently. At night, the bed became a battlefield. I started with 1 blanket. I woke up cocooned in fur, 4 tails wrapped around me like living scarves, and someone nibbling my earlobe in their sleep. I tried sleeping on the floor. They interpreted that as a mating challenge. I was asserting dominance. According to Kira's cousin, the one who kept testing the tensile strength of my uniform seams with her claws. You clearly want to be chased, she added, stretching like a feline and bearing just enough fang to make me forget how doors work. I tried rules. Posted them on the wall. No unsolicited grooming. Limit tail contact. No bed sharing without prior written consent. Within a day, the list had been graffitied with sultry paw prints and hearts. They framed it. Now it hangs in the mess hall like a sacred scroll. There was one moment, just one, when I thought I had them figured out. I found Kira alone, focused, slicing dried root fruit into perfect hexagonal shapes. She offered me one, her eyes serious. When we give this shape, it means we are ready to balance our energies with our mate. I nodded solemnly, touched. Then she added, and also, that we wish to climb them like a mountain during the second heat. I coughed for 10 minutes. Then came the incident with the translator band. One of the kits, a younger cousin with a prankster streak, reprogrammed my wrist translator to turn every phrase I spoke into something suggestive. Let's check the coolant levels. Became. Let's compare body temperatures. We need to resupply oxygen. Translated as, I long for your breath on my neck. Worst of all, I didn't notice for hours. The entire family thought I was finally coming around. I had never been offered so many back rubs, snacks, or heated tail wraps in my life. When I finally corrected it, Kira looked at me disappointed. So, you weren't asking me to preen your neck fur while we soak in your quarters thermal unit? I told her no. She pouted. Then, under her breath, coward! Everywhere I turned, a Vulpine waited. Their idea of privacy was, we politely pretend not to listen while hovering inches away. I couldn't take a shower without hearing 3 different voices discussing water temperature through the vent. They started calling it the human's ritual cleanse. Kira's aunt kept offering to join. For efficiency. Her logic? We share fur rinsing duties in my culture. Why waste water? I told her Earth customs frowned upon group bathing. Earth sounds lonely, she said wistfully. One evening, I returned to find the whole family in my quarters, surrounding a hologram of Earth wildlife documentaries. They were watching foxes, Earth foxes, and crying. They look like us, one kit whispered. But they lack the boldness to court their human openly. Then they turned to me, eyes gleaming with sympathy and opportunity. "We'll be brave for them," Kira whispered, resting her head on my chest like she had a license. It didn't help that my comms officer started forwarding messages. Apparently, the Vulpine clan had submitted shared residence verification to the planetary census. As far as the system was concerned, I now had 12 dependents and 1 primary mate bond. The base commander sent a confused congratulations. My ration allocation tripled. So did the shampoo bills. And still, despite all of it, I couldn't quite stay mad. They cooked. They cleaned. They fixed my old water recycler and filled it with citrus-scented filters. So your scent makes us swoon less in public. When I tripped over a crate, 3 of them caught me before I hit the ground, arguing over who deserved my gratitude first. When I stubbed my toe, a tiny cousin tried to bite the table. That hurt me. They're insane. They're exhausting. And they keep insisting I'm their strongest provider, even when all I did was share 1 emergency ration. Still, there was something sweet under all the chaos. Their belief that food meant trust. That sharing a bunk meant devotion. That every awkward, fumbling moment was proof of compatibility. And somewhere between towel ambushes and overenthusiastic tail grooming, I started to understand why they stayed. Maybe, why I let them. Even if I now sleep wedged between Kira and her mother, both of whom snore in stereo and steal all the covers. By the end of the 3rd week, I had a spreadsheet tracking Vulpine nap schedules, feeding rotations, tail brush preferences, and an entirely separate column titled Flirt Risk High. Vex's aunt, the silver-furred seductress known as Aunt Parii, had moved into my room. Not with permission. Not with luggage. Just her tail, her wink, and a firm belief that rotation rights included bed territory. She declared herself the evening wife, whatever that meant, and began every night with, "So, am I on the menu, or is it bring your own snack again?" I tried everything, pretending to sleep, assigning her to the airlock chamber for security duty, even faking a girlfriend from Earth by playing audio messages from my ex. She just wagged her tail and asked, "Can she preen a tail like this?" before throwing it dramatically over her shoulder like a feathery boa. At some point, I gave up resisting and just made dinner. And that, apparently, was its own kind of commitment again. Rixa, the family matriarch and proud mother of 12, began referring to me as our human. Not the human. Our. Possessive. Plural. One night over stew, she whispered conspiratorially, "My cousin's single. You should meet her. She's got very thick ears." I didn't know how to respond, so I complimented the broth. Mistake. Compliments were foreplay, I had learned. Saying, "This tastes incredible," was apparently the equivalent of, "Let's merge genes and sign a lease." And yet, through all the fur in the sink, the misread innuendos, and the battle to reclaim towel hooks, something had shifted. The house didn't feel like a cage anymore. It felt alive. Every day, I'd come home to yips, barks, something smoldering in the oven, and the question, "Did you bring snacks, provider?" If love had a sound, it was 12 Vulpine girls fighting over who got to clean your boots first. Of course, the Galactic Housing Authority did not see it as love. They saw it as a code violation. A very serious one. The inspector arrived in a floating pod, scanned my overcrowded quarters, and promptly began citing regulations in 5 languages. Vexa, misinterpreting his legal jargon as some sort of challenge to my worth, leapt onto the table and began licking my face while shouting, "He has fed me thrice. Thrice. He is mine by meal law." Aunt Parii joined in with her own declaration, grabbing the inspector's clipboard and writing, "Mate rights reserved." The man fled before I could explain that feeding wasn't always a euphemism. The next day, the Vulpine clan held a human appreciation ritual. I was dressed in feathers, slathered in spiced oils, and presented to a chorus of howling approval. Someone threw confetti. Someone else played a flute. And then they carried me to the ceremonial couch where I was told, very seriously, You must rest while we tell tales of your endurance. I nodded, then immediately passed out from exhaustion. I woke up 6 hours later under a pile of tales. Oddly, my biggest problem wasn't the flirting or the misunderstanding, it was the sheer bureaucracy of love. The marriage contract they printed for me was 73 pages long and included terms like emotional belly rub clause and mandatory ear grooming Sundays. I didn't sign it. Not out of fear. Out of respect. Because by now, I wasn't just some human who gave out snacks. I was a part of something weirdly wholesome, aggressively affectionate, and accidentally erotic. And I didn't want to ruin that with paperwork. So, I proposed something radical. Let's just live, I said. No contracts. No titles. No meal-binding rituals. Just be here. As long as it feels good. Vexa tilted her head, her ears twitching in what I now recognized as thoughtful consent. Very well, she said. But I still get morning feeding rights. And Pariah leaned in. And I get dessert. The laughter that followed was warm. Tangled. A little inappropriate. But real. The Galactic inspector eventually returned, this time with backup. A fleet of housing officials ready to evict me or fine me into oblivion. But when they landed, the Vulpine girls met them with fruit platters, poetry recitals, and the story of how I saved Vexa from starvation and gave her family a home. It wasn't just romantic. It was political. Cultural. Almost sacred. One of the inspectors pulled me aside and whispered, "Do you realize they've petitioned the Interstellar Rights Council to recognize you as a folk husband of the Southern Tale?" I didn't. But I suspected it involved more feeding. So now, here I am. Living with a dozen affectionate aliens, covered in fur most mornings, occasionally asked awkward questions like, "Is it true your species mates while standing?" And, "Do you wish for another ant added to your schedule?" I've stopped fighting it. Stopped running from the absurdity. Embraced it, even. Because somewhere between the mistaken marriages and tail-brush diplomacy, I found something no other human scout ever had, a household that made chaos feel like home. Even if I do have to share my bed with two cousins who purr in their sleep. And yes, sometimes I cook breakfast shirtless. And yes, there's a scoreboard now. No, I won't tell you what the points mean. Just know, I'm winning.